Hello everybody, it's your boy Proftrof and we're back with some 40k lore by Arch. This is Terminator Armour aka Tactical Dreadnought Armour. Okay, I saw that in the Mandalore video we watched about that game. I forgot the name of it, the mod with the game, and the Terminator Armour looks fucking dope, so I wanna see what it is. What did it do? So let's get to it, boys. Okay.
Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome to yet another Warhammer 40k lore video. Today we'll be looking at Terminator Armour because, well, I considered it thematic after watching Gabriel Angelos's acrobatics in that one Dawn of War 3 trailer. So let's get right to it.
Oh yeah, Dawn of War 1
Terminator Armour's
mod.
primary purpose is to increase the protection and firepower wielded by the individual Adeptus Astartes. In return for this, mobility has been sacrificed. A Space Marine wearing tactical Dreadnought Armour, as Terminator Armour is also known as, will not be able to move at the same speed or with the same grace as his brethren in normal power armour. You can run in Terminator Armour, and you can build up a fair bit of speed doing so. However, it is only for the most skilled of users, as Terminator suits are quite hard to control at that kind of speed. Now, this does not mean that you're going to be sprinting in Terminator Armour, and you're not going to be doing it effectively, as even some of the most hardened veterans in the first companies of some of the most elite chapters out there can only maintain relatively short bursts of speed while controlling their warplate. This is due to the extremely bulky and heavy nature of the plate itself. Once this stuff gets moving, it is virtually impossible to stop it, but it is also very, very hard to control it. Making sharp turns or minute adjustments to your course is very, very hard when you're wearing several hundred kilos of ceramite and plasteel. To put it simply, if you want to turn, the armor is going to want to continue moving forward due to its momentum and its weight. And as for jumping, well, yes, no. No, absolutely not. And here's why. Terminator Armour is, of course, powered. It has several layers of internal artificial muscle fibre that allows it to move the various parts of the armour without too much strength being used on parts of the wearer. This, however, does not mean that the armour allows the wearer to move as if he was not wearing the armour. Simply because the machinery inside the Terminator Armour is there to make this ridiculously heavy battle plate movable at all. And that's about all it's actually capable of. Terminator Armour is excessively heavy, to the point where if the armour were to lose power, the Adeptus Astartes inside would not be able to move the armour. And we are talking about a superhuman individual here with the strength of a good dozen humans. He would be completely helpless and essentially trapped within the armoured shell. There are accounts of exceptional individuals being able to carry out limited movement inside Terminator Armour when individual parts of the armour were damaged or non-functioning, and there are also tales of Primarchs being able to move around in unpowered battleplate, but this is not something that your average Space Marine is going to be pulling off with any type of battlefield efficiency, so to say. It would kind of be like tying several hundred kilograms worth of weights to the arms and legs of a martial artist. He might be able to move, but he's not going to be very good at fighting. Nevertheless, it has to be said that the current patterns of Terminator Armour are a hell of a lot more nimble than the first versions produced. In fact, the Mechanicum's first experiment with tactical Dreadnought Armour was essentially useless on the battlefield. It made the wearer almost stationary, and it made complicated motions, like for example reloading a weapon, virtually impossible. But
Wow.
over the years, the various patterns of
Impressive.
Terminator armor were revised
Jeez.
and improved until we ended up with the first version of effective Terminator plate, the Cataphractii armor. Now, this is going to be a general video on Terminator armor, so I'll be getting into the various marks, patterns, and their history in another video sometimes in the nebulous future. For now, though, let's get back to the origins. Like I mentioned, the original tactical Dreadnought armor was simply too big to be combat effective. Eventually, as nimbler, faster, and more reliable versions were produced, it was envisioned that tactical Dreadnought armor would completely replace the normal patterns of Astartes.
Why is that one motherfucker not wearing his helmet? You know what happens to people that wear helmets? They die. Wear your helmet, boys.
Power armor. It was reasoned that the legions would still maintain stocks of standard power armor for lighter duties like scouting and skirmishing, but the main bulk of the legion would be equipped with these heavier suits of armor and essentially act like a massive sledgehammer to blast apart the opposition, which is not an unreasonable assumption to make at all, considering the main strength of the Astartes legions had shown itself to be their sheer shock and awe value, blasting into enemy formations and scattering them using their superior reflexes, their strength, their power, and their protection. Therefore, it is only logical that the next generation of frontline battleplate should focus on increasing survivability and firepower, leaving the question of mobility to the transportation crafts, like drop pods, land raiders, and thunderhawks. There was a rather considerable drawback, however. In fact, there were two. The second not being immediately obvious because it was part of something that the designers of the Terminator suit simply could not possibly imagine. The first, however, was very, very obvious indeed. The simple fact was that tactical Dreadnought armor is exceptionally expensive to make. It requires an absolute buttload of rare resources and a ton of knowledge, skill, and time to create even a single working suit. And then there's the maintenance. The suit is a very complicated piece of hardware and so requires a lot of maintenance, and it requires a lot of skilled maintenance, and to make matters worse, since this suit is designed to protect the wearer from anything up to and including main battle cannon guns, it does have a tendency to get beat up quite badly, which requires extensive maintenance and extensive repairs.
It looks cool as fuck, though.
Seeing as these suits, at least in the modern universe, have become extremely rare, the recovery and repair of these suits are considered an even higher priority, which naturally increases the rarity of the stuff needed to repair them and build them. That again increases the prices of the suits of armor. Essentially, the more Terminator suits are available, the more expensive they are. This is a weapon system that would have been possible to distribute evenly across all of the legions and have it replace power armor if the Imperium was a unified entity at the height of its power. In today's Imperium, suits of tactical Dreadnought armor are very, very rare, and they are treasured by their owners. Terminator armor is still in production, but not in anywhere near the quantities that would be necessary to replace power armor. In fact, it's barely enough to replace the current casualty rates amongst the chapters equipped with Terminator armor. And not all chapters are fully equipped with Terminator armor. Traditionally, a chapter's first company will be equipped with Terminator armor, so that would equal about 100 suits. However, in reality, only the biggest and oldest chapters have any real hope of maintaining this ratio. When a new founding of Space Marine chapters is deemed necessary, a concerted effort is made to at least get the first company of these chapters up to 50% in full Terminator armor, but even that is most definitively a rarity. And even if they are equipped with 50 suits of Terminator armor, it is not entirely likely that they will stay at 50 suits of Terminator armor for very long, considering that this is the armor that is thrown into the heaviest of fighting, and while Terminator armor is
I've noticed that, like, the helmets on these armors, like, why are they long and long elongated. You know, why they go far ahead of the face? Kind of looks like a dog a little bit, no?
This is the armor that is thrown into the heaviest of fighting, and while Terminator armor is pretty goddamn
What's he
tough,
fighting, I guess?
it is not completely
Look at those.
indestructible. Additionally, it is not entirely a question of whether or not armor is even available. Fighting in Terminator armor is very, very different from fighting in power armor. Indeed, even just moving in Terminator armor requires an entirely different set of skills to moving in power armor. Additionally, the weapon systems that the Terminator will be asked to operate are quite different from what he will be used to. The most normal weapon by Space Marine standards would probably be the Stormbolter, but even that is a weapon that is vastly different from the standard issue bolter. While the standard issue Godwin pattern bolter is, in all due relativity, a precision weapon along the lines of a rifle, except firing, 40mm grenades, on the other hand, the Stormbolter is what would happen if a Saiga 12 fucked a Mark 19. Highly inaccurate, exceptionally ugly, and very heavy on the boom boom. Exactly
Very
the
heavy
kind
on
of
the
weapon
boom
you
boom.
would want in close quarter combat situations, like for example fighting through an urban hive, through the corridors of a derelict space hulk, or if you're being dropped in the middle of an enemy horde via drop pod. And while the simple fact that the suits of armor would cost an absolute buttload of resources was a pretty obvious downside, the second was a little bit harder to predict. You see, Terminator armor proved to be everything the Adeptus Astartes needed in a battle suit when it comes to protection and firepower, and the
Okay.
mobility could be made up for it with other ways. However, there was one small problem to making this the universal battle plate, namely the fact that it did not do particularly well against other Astartes. Now, this was something that was entirely unthinkable at the time of the actual designing of the Terminator
Fucking Horus! Gotta fuck up everything cool for the Empire. Goddamn you bald cunt.
suit. Legionaries fighting legionaries was practically inconceivable, so nobody really thought about that. But during the Horus Heresy, it was proven time and time again that Battle Brothers in normal power armor was more than capable of outmaneuvering, and therefore getting behind the Terminator armor and using its weak points, which it inevitably has to have, joints, etc., against it. Unfortunately for the loyalist legionaries, the Sons of Horus were the legion with the most Terminator suits, and as such, they had already learned the ins and outs of its capabilities, and during the cleansings on Istvan, they had also realized its vulnerabilities to brothers in tactical power armor, and had devised tactics and doctrines to deal with this threat. Still, it became quite obvious that Terminator armor should preferably only be used in certain circumstances, as, well, losing the life of an Adeptus Astartes is always a bit of a waste of resources, but losing Adeptus Astartes and his suit of Terminator armor is a cost that very, very few chapters can afford. As such, in the modern 41st Millennium Tactical Dreadnought Armour,
I just noticed that my boy has a third ball sack. Look at my boy. Look at his ball sack. There is a head over there. Why is that head there? I have no idea. But a nice flex, boy.
is only really deployed when it has a specific tactical role to fulfill. For example, in spaceship boarding operations, in urban combat, or in massed attacks on enemy formations. And during these operations, the Terminators essentially act as the tanks of a combined arm formation, with brothers in more standard power armor providing defensive cordons and protection for the Terminator's firepower. For example, if the chapter's first company needs to fight through a hive city, there will always be one or more squads of Space Marines in power armor protecting the units in Terminator armor. The units in Terminator armor will clear buildings, while the brothers in power armor provide overwatch and protection. And in return, the brothers in Terminator armor provide additional protection to their more mundanely armored brethren by being able to flush out snipers and pretty much all forms of heavy infantry weapons with little to no personal risk, as you're going to need something the size of a las cannon to have any real hope of denting Terminator armor. Additionally, the Terminators can act as CICs, Combat Information Centers, on the battlefield, as each suit of Terminator armor is equipped with a wide variety of sensors and tactical instruments, allowing them to tap into the live feeds of their Battle Brothers helmet cameras along with the other Terminators, and provide their covering squads with additional information that they gain from their, as I mentioned, wide variety of observation equipment. And while most suits of power armor does indeed have some form of this equipment, those mounted on Terminator plate are usually considerably more effective. Additionally, there's the simple fact that a Terminator is capable of carrying with them a hell of a lot more firepower than any brother in power armor. Things like assault cannons with their rotating barrels, heavy flamethrowers with the multiple nozzles, the storm bolters themselves, as well as some of the heaviest infantry-equipped melee combat weapons in the Imperium. Only stuff like Imperial Knights and Warhounds could ever carry anything bigger. And due to the increased energy capacities of Terminator plate over that of normal power armor, they can also utilize more exotic equipment more readily. For example, every suit of Terminator armor is equipped with a power fist, unless some other piece of hardware is fitted, and for close quarters situations they often carry so-called storm shields, which have miniature shield generators built into them. These shields are capable of taking blasts that even Terminator plate could not withstand, and coming out practically unscathed. Not to mention the mighty Thunder Hammer, which is quite the intriguing little weapon. Most power weapons essentially generate a small shield around the edge of the blade. This means that once the shielded edge impacts upon a solid object, the shield itself pushes the molecules away from its own field, thereby making it hellishly sharp, as it doesn't really cut, it simply just parts whatever it touches. The Thunder Hammer, however, concentrates the entirety of this field in a relatively small area, so that when it impacts upon the target, it releases a devastating blast of concussive force, this being where it gets its name, Thunder Hammer. For any battle brother wearing standard power armor, this is most definitively a two-handed weapon, as the hammerhead is, well, it's about the size of a human torso. Not exactly feather light, but for a Terminator, it is a one-handed weapon. The armament itself is usually handed out based on the mission in question. For example, if there's going to be a lot of corridor fighting, in all due likelihood the majority of the squad will be armed either with storm bolters, heavy flamers, or melee weapons. Or in the case of longer engagement ranges, one or two members of the squad would be equipped with assault cannons, while the rest would be equipped with a mix of storm bolters and cyclone missile launchers. And in a more balanced squad, you would usually have the squad sergeant, being the most veteran member, be equipped with a storm bolter and some form of power weapon, often a power sword or a single set of lightning claws, and then have a further two members of the squad be equipped with the standard close combat weapon, the power fist, along with storm bolters, one ranged firepower specialist with an assault cannon, and one support member equipped with a cyclone missile launcher, as well as a storm bolter and the standard issue power fist. The fifth and last member of a standard tactical Terminator squad would then be either a close combat heavy support specialist with a heavy flamer or something to that alike and a chain fist, or a close quarters melee specialists, often with a storm shield and a thunder hammer, or a dual set of lightning claws. This would be the setup most common if the squad is bordering something like, say for example, a Space Hulk, and they don't really know what they could be running into. They might be running into Gene Stealers, they might be running into Orcs, they might be running into Mutants, they might be running into Chaos Cultists, they might be running into Cthulhu knockoffs. There is simply no telling with Space Hulks. But the most important part of a Terminator's armory is almost certainly, ironically enough, his armor. A suit of Terminator armor is a full exoskeletal suit. powered by fiber-bundled muscles and protected by several layers of plasteel and ceramite. It is also virtually entirely insulated from the outside world with its own life support system and power supply. This means that even if the Terminator armor were to be doused in flames, it would have very little to absolutely no effect on the space marine inside. It also means that Adeptus Astartes in Terminator armor is capable of operating in the void of space for extended period of time.
Oh, that's
As
interesting.
previously mentioned, the suit also has a hell of a lot higher power output than normal power armor. Most of this is of course used to operate the weapons and move the armor itself, but there is more than enough left over to operate several banks of extremely sophisticated sensor systems, giving the Terminator an unparalleled battlefield awareness. The suit is also capable of stiffening up, locking up certain joints to provide a more stable firing platforms, which, in addition to all of the targeting sensors and other equipment, means that Terminators are ridiculously accurate, even at extremely long ranges, as they are capable of not only accurately aiming at a target, but also automatically account for things like gravity, humidity, wind direction, and the ballistic capabilities of the weapon. Additionally, Terminator armor has
It doesn't sound strong at all, not overpowered at all.
one further ace up its sleeves when it comes to the protection of its
More?
wearer. In addition to, of course, several centimeters of plasteel and ceramite, as well as shock-absorbing materials, Terminator armor is also equipped with something known as the crux terminatus. This is both a badge of honor, marking one out as someone worthy of wearing tactical Dreadnought armor, but it also works as a sort of force field generator, capable of completely negating hits that even Terminator armor would not be able to withstand. The common reason given for why Terminator armor is capable of doing this is because a tiny piece of the Emperor's own battle armor is forged within the crux terminatus. This is almost certainly a bit of a religious delusion at this point, simply because even if the Emperor's armor had these abilities, and in a universe like 40k where simply believing in something can often be enough
Exactly.
to make it happen, the problem remains that even though the Emperor was an extraordinarily large individual, easily the size of a Primarch, there simply wouldn't be
Big
enough
boy.
metal even in his battle plate to infuse every single crux terminatus in the galaxy with a part of it. It is far more likely that this force field has a more rational and technological explanation that has simply been forgotten by the Adeptus Mechanicus, and in an age where religion and technology go hand in hand, it is pretty damn easy to see why they would make the assumption that it is some minuscule piece of the Emperor's armor that is giving this miraculous effect, rather than some long-lost, forgotten technology.
Hey, you just gotta believe enough in the Emperor and he's gonna save you. Okay, just believe. Just gotta believe.
And lastly, let's talk a little bit about Terminator deployment, because of course, the best armor and the best weapon in the universe does not matter for much if they can't actually get at the enemy.
Okay.
The most traditional way of delivering a large dose of heavily armored Terminator butt sex to the enemy is usually through the usage of a Land Raider. Some patterns of Land Raiders, for example the Crusader, has more or less been specifically designed with the idea of delivering large amounts of heavily armored dudes straight into the enemy's midst. The standard pattern Land Raider can only carry about 5 Terminators, but a specially modified one like this can carry anything from 8 upwards all the way to 10, or twice that many in the case of normal power-armored Battle Brothers. Additionally, the Land Raider is extremely heavily armored, because losing a squad of Terminators just because their vehicle blew the fuck up is a very, very bad way of using Terminators. Granted, even if the vehicle were to explode, the odds are that the Terminators inside will be able to dig their way out of the smoking wreckage, but best not take any chances. Additionally, the Land Raider is, of course, more than capable.
I just noticed how many fucking guns this thing has. Look at it. Has those 2 on the front, the dude powering like the third thing. It has a couple on each side. Jesus Christ.
Capable of laying down a whole lot of whoop-ass by itself, as it is usually quite heavily armed. Indeed, some chapters have even developed a particularly sneaky little tactic using Land Raiders mounting heavy flamers. These flamers are capable of putting out heat, capable of defeating standard Astartes power armor, but Terminator armor can resist it for relatively brief periods of time. This means that the Land Raider can lay down a wall of flames to clear any nasty enemies out of the area directly in front of it, for example a large breach in a fortress wall, and thereby allow the Terminators to simply stroll through the flames that will, at this point, have long since chased away any but the bravest or the stupidest of defenders. The Land Raider tactic does have one drawback, however, the simple fact that Land Raiders are fucking massive, and very, very, very powerful, meaning that the enemy, in all due likelihood, is going to have a massive firepower hard-on for anything that even vaguely resembles a Land Raider, which puts both it and its cargo in rather considerable danger of attracting the vast majority of the enemy's available firepower. And while the Land Raider is most certainly a heavily armoured vehicle, the best form of defense is, as always, to simply not get punched in the face, especially not by anti-tank weapons.
Makes sense.
And this is where the Stormravens come in, aka that thing would never fucking fly, or the brick. This flying, or, well...
Is that a tank with wings?
Inertia-defying hunk of armor is capable of
I
delivering
believe I can
Terminators
fly.
into the midst of an enemy formation at considerably higher speed than a Land Raider. It also carries about as much armor as a Land Raider, which is one of the many reasons why the thing should never be able to get off the fucking ground, but that is entirely besides the point.
Yo, look at this fat ass cat. God damn.
The thing also carries enough firepower to make even the most ardent Land Raider Crusader blush. And so, you've got the best of both worlds, speed, armor, and a buttload of firepower with the additional ability of delivering Terminators straight into the enemy's midst, and occasionally Dreadnoughts. Yes, I know.
How?
Many a people have looked at the Stormraven and thought, fuck you, Games Workshop. Fuck you. But, in all due honesty, as far as Games Workshop's crimes are concerned, this is one of the lesser ones, and at the very least, it looks bloody awesome. And of course, if you absolutely have to get to the enemy pretty much immediately and no Stormravens or Land Raiders are available, all Terminators are equipped with a teleportation homing beacon, which means that they can be, more or less accurately, be deployed directly into the enemy's strongholds, literally popping up in the midst of an enemy fortress. Granted, very few...
Can you imagine like 10 of these motherfuckers just popping inside of the walls, be like, hello, motherfucker. Pow, 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 everyone's dead.
Few chapters are willing to teleport their Terminators without an already in-place teleportation beacon to lessen the already ridiculous dangers of teleportation, simply because losing a veteran brother of the first company, and quite possibly his armor, because you teleported him into a mountain instead of onto the flat plains, is a rather considerable fuck-up as far as the Adeptus Astartes are concerned. On the other hand, though, ridiculously dangerous as it may be, there is no denying the sheer shock and awe effect of having a group of excessively heavily armed and armored individuals pop up right in the middle of one's fortifications. Teleportation is also the preferred method for boarding enemy ships, simply because a boarding torpedo, while relatively safe by, Space Marine boarding standards, is most definitively a little bit too risky to risk the vaunted members of the First Company and their precious suits of Terminator armor. In most cases, the more mundanely armored brothers will be tasked with placing a teleportation home somewhere valuable within the enemy ship and then letting the brothers of the First Company swoop in and take the majority of the glory. Granted, there's still the possibility of one or more Terminators materializing inside of the starship, but the damage they are capable of causing in the confined spaces of a spacefaring vessel usually makes up for the risks involved in their deployment. Some chapters, however, will entirely refuse to use teleportation technology because, well, it's fucking dangerous, and 2, it makes you travel through the warp, which in many cases is not the safest of options, both mentally and physically. And if they still do need to get Terminators on board an enemy starships, again...
Oh, it's a fisting boy Terminator. He looks pretty fucking awesome, let's be honest. With double claw.
Torpedoes
It's a Wolverine.
are a potential option, but are usually not regarded as the best one, seeing as, again, Terminator armor is rather too valuable to simply throw at an enemy ship and hope that it sticks. Instead, they will usually use some form of specialized vehicle. For example, the Cestus Assault Ram, which was designed pretty much with this very goal in mind, to deliver large amounts of heavily armored and heavily armed individuals to the most vulnerable parts of an enemy's starships, while still maintaining enough engine power and maneuverability to get out of the way of the largest clusters of enemy AAA fire. Finally, a quick note on Chaos Terminators.
Oh
There are
shit.
some dark rumors stating that certain adepts of the Dark Mechanicus within the Eye of Terror do have access to some of the standard template constructs required to produce Terminator armor, although this has not yet been entirely confirmed. But even if they do possess the technology to produce new suits and the resources necessary, they cannot be producing a whole lot of them, as if Terminator armor is highly precious and extremely highly valued outside in the loyal Imperium, within the Eye of Terror and the Force of Chaos, a suit of Terminator armor is almost embarrassingly valuable. Forget equipping entire companies with this Terminator plate. In most Chaos Warbands, only the absolute highest leader would have any real hope.
By the way, I just noticed this dude has a fucking... Look at... He has chains leading up to like a iron piece of metal hanging from his nutsack. What the hell, Chaos? The fuck?
Hope of having access to a suit of Terminator armor, and having an entire bodyguard units of perhaps as many as 10 individuals all armed in Terminator armor is one of the highest status symbols available to any Chaos Warlord. And that, ladies and gentlemen, has been my lore video on Terminator armor, or at the very least, the general video on Terminator armor. We'll be getting into some of the more interesting patterns, and specifically the earliest patterns used during the Horus Heresy, in a video all of their own. Until next time, I have been Arch. Thank you very much for listening, and I do hope to see you all again soon.
For sure, buddy. Anyway, this was fucking awesome. I learned a lot about... I thought, before I watched the video, I thought that Terminator armor was just like, heavier armor, so we just have, more defenses. I didn't know about the guns, the fucking force fields, the teleportation, what the fuck. Anyway, quick thank you to the Patreons. Pedro Martinez, Commands, Call You and Robert, Princess, Was, Derek Fuels, Chicken 53, Senor Hilter, Lemon and Moon, and Eichmar. Thank you. Anyway, thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you next time. Oh yeah, I'll be starting the stream soon. I don't know when I'm gonna upload this video exactly, so might have started, might have finished it by now, but yeah, everyday streaming for the next week or two, so come check me out if you want to, and have a nice day, everybody.